Hi, I'm Mira. Welcome to another story. Let's see where this one takes us. The floating city cast a faint, crystalline glow across the wasteland, its towering platforms barely visible through the thick haze of toxic air. Beneath the shimmering lights, Finn Corwin stood at the edge of a narrow ridge, their breath shallow beneath the filtration masks strapped tightly to their face. The map, fragile and ancient, was rolled out in their hands, its faded ink a web of lines and coordinates leading to a place no one believed existed. Behind them, the rhythmic crunch of boots against gravel made Finn tense. Lyra Kale, enforcer of the upper strata, approached with her usual air of calm authority. Her sleek black armour caught the faint light of the city above, a stark contrast to the rough, patched coat Finn wore. Lyra stopped a few feet away, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. "Still convinced this place is real?" she asked, her tone more curious than mocking. Finn turned slightly, the faintest smirk visible beneath their mask. "You're still here, aren't you? Guess you're not as skeptical as you want me to think." Lyra said nothing, her gaze fixed on the wasteland below. The two of them had been walking a precarious line since they joined forces, neither trusting the other, both relying on the fragile alliance born of necessity. The map had brought them this far, but their destination lay beyond the cracked, desolate ground that stretched out like a wound in the earth. "This sanctuary," Finn said, rolling up the map and tucking it carefully into their satchel. "If we find it, what's your plan?" "What's your plan?" Lyra's jaw tightened. "That depends on what we find." "You mean who we tell?" Finn countered. "Let me guess, you'll want to keep it a secret, something to maintain order, right?" Lyra's expression didn't waver. "I'll do what's necessary to protect the city." "And if protecting it means tearing it down?" Lyra's silence was answer enough. The coordinates led them to a crumbling overpass, its skeletal remains jutting out like broken ribs over a gaping canyon. Below, a massive structure lay half buried in the earth, its metallic surface gleaming faintly in the weak sunlight. Finn crouched at the edge, scanning the area with a pair of battered binoculars. "There it is," they said, their voice hushed. "Looks intact." Lyra knelt beside them, her sharp gaze studying the canyon floor. Movement near the structure caught her attention. A group of scavengers, armed and restless, milled around the entrance, their patched armour and makeshift weapons a stark reminder of the wasteland's dangers. "This just got more complicated," Lyra muttered. "They've already staked a claim." Finn let out a low whistle. "Looks like we're making friends today. Any brilliant ideas?" "Stay quiet, stay low," Lyra said, rising to her feet. "We'll talk first. Fight if we have to." "Always the diplomat," Finn quipped, following her lead. "Let's hope they're in a talking mood." The two descended into the canyon, their movements cautious and deliberate. As they approached the scavengers, one of them spotted them and raised an alarm. Weapons were drawn, and the largest of the group, a man with a deep scar cutting across his face, stepped forward, his rifle aimed squarely at Finn. "Turn around," he growled. "You're not welcome here." Lyra stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We don't want trouble. We're here for information." The man's gaze flicked to Lyra's armour, his scowl deepening. "An enforcer? You've got some nerve showing your face out here." "I'm not your enemy," Lyra said evenly. "But if you make me one, you won't like how it ends." The man's grip on his rifle tightened, but his hesitation was clear. Finn, sensing an opportunity, stepped forward. "Look, we're not here to take anything from you. We just want to get inside. Whatever's in there, we'll leave it alone." "And why should I believe you?" the man spat. "Because we're still standing here," Finn replied, their voice calm but firm. "If we wanted to fight, we wouldn't have come empty-handed." The man studied them for a long moment before lowering his rifle. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. But don't think for a second I trust you." "Noted," Finn said, flashing a wry grin. "Now let's see what's behind door number 1. Inside the structure, the air was cooler, almost sterile. The walls were smooth and lined with faintly glowing panels, casting an eerie blue light. Finn and Lyra moved cautiously, the scavengers following at a wary distance. Symbols and diagrams covered the walls, their meaning as inscrutable as the structure itself. "This place wasn't built by anyone we know," Lyra murmured, her hand resting on the hilt of her weapon. "No kidding," Finn replied, their eyes scanning the strange symbols. "The question is, who built it and why?" A faint hum began to build, the light along the walls intensifying. Lyra's hand went to her comm, her voice low but urgent. Something's activating. Stay sharp. The ground beneath them trembled, and from the shadows ahead a mechanical figure emerged, sleek, humanoid, and glowing with the same blue light as the walls. Its movements were fluid and deliberate, its gaze fixed on the intruders. Finn's breath caught. Looks like we just found out who's been keeping the lights on. The sanctuary wasn't abandoned, and it wasn't unguarded. The mechanical figure stepped forward, its glowing blue eyes scanning the group with an unnerving intensity. It was humanoid in form, but its movements were too smooth, too precise. An elegant efficiency that spoke of technology far beyond anything Finn or Lyra had ever seen. Its metallic surface reflected the faint light of the structure's walls, giving it an almost spectral appearance. Behind them, the scavengers muttered nervously, their weapons shifting uneasily in their hands. The leader, the scarred man, barked a sharp order. "Hold your ground!" But even his voice wavered slightly. Finn glanced at Lyra, their heart pounding. "So, diplomat, you want to talk this thing down?" Lyra's hand hovered over her weapon, her expression taut with calculation. "It's not attacking yet. Let's see what it wants." The machine stopped a few feet away, its gaze locking onto the group. A voice emanated from it, low, resonant, and strangely calm. "Unauthorized presence detected. State your purpose." The group exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "We're seeking information. We mean no harm." The machine tilted its head slightly, the motion almost human. "This facility is restricted. Unauthorized access violates preservation protocols." Finn couldn't resist a muttered quip. "Great! A killer robot with a rulebook." The machine's gaze shifted to Finn, its eyes flaring slightly. "Humour is irrelevant. Compliance is mandatory." Lyra raised a hand, silencing Finn before they could escalate things further. "We're not here to disrupt the facility," she said. "But if it's preservation you're worried about, maybe you should be talking to us. The world outside is dying." The machine paused, as if processing her words. The hum in the air deepened, the walls glowing brighter in response. "Preservation extends beyond this facility," it said finally. "External conditions are monitored. Current status unsustainable." "Tell us something we don't know," Finn muttered, earning a sharp look from Lyra. The machine's gaze lingered on them before it turned, gesturing toward the corridor ahead. "Follow." The group hesitated, but Lyra motioned for them to comply. "Stay alert," she said under her breath. "This thing's not showing all its cards." Finn fell into step beside her, their voice low. "You think it's leading us into a trap?" "Maybe," Lyra admitted, "but it's also the only thing in here that knows what's going on. We need answers." The corridor widened into a massive chamber, its walls covered in intricate designs that glowed faintly in the dim light. At the centre of the room stood a towering pillar of crystalline material, its surface etched with the same symbols as the map. The air was thick with an almost palpable energy, and the hum of the facility seemed to resonate from the pillar itself. "This is it," Finn whispered, their eyes wide. "The sanctuary." The machine stopped beside the pillar, its gaze fixed on the group. "This facility was designed to restore balance," it said. "Current imbalance is the result of external interference." "Interference?" Lyra asked, her brow furrowing. "From the city?" "Affirmative," the machine replied. "Resource extraction and atmospheric disruption have destabilized the region. Restoration protocols require immediate action." Finn frowned. "You mean the city is causing the storms? The wasteland?" "Affirmative," the machine said again. "This facility maintains equilibrium. External interference exceeds tolerable thresholds." The implications hit Finn like a blow. The floating city, the jewel of humanity's survival, wasn't just perched above the wasteland, it had created it. Finn glanced at Lyra, expecting her to dismiss the claim, but the look on her face was one of quiet horror. "How do we fix it?" Lyra asked, her voice subdued. The machine turned to the pillar. "Restoration requires recalibration of this facility. Energy redistribution will stabilize the region. Consequences for external systems significant." "You mean the city?" Lyra said, her voice sharpening. "It would lose its power." "Affirmative," the machine replied. "Equilibrium cannot prioritize individual systems." The room fell into heavy silence. The scavengers muttered uneasily, their earlier bravado now replaced with uncertainty. Finn felt the weight of the decision pressing down on them. The sanctuary wasn't just a place of refuge, it was the key to undoing the damage humanity had inflicted on the world. But doing so would mean dismantling the very system that had kept their lives afloat.
We have to do it.
Finn said finally, their voice breaking the silence. Lyra turned to them, her expression hard. Do you know what you're saying? If we disable the city's systems, people will die. And if we don't, everyone dies, Finn shot back. The storms, the wasteland, this isn't just about the city anymore. It's about survival. Real survival. Lyra hesitated, her gaze shifting to the pillar. For years she had believed in the city's order, its rules. But now, faced with the undeniable truth of its cost, she felt that belief unravelling. Let me be clear, Lyra said, turning to the scavengers. If we do this, it won't be clean. The city will fall, and chaos will follow. The scarred leader stepped forward, his expression grim. We've lived in chaos for years. If this can give us a fighting chance, we'll take it. Lyra nodded slowly, her hand resting on the hilt of her weapon. Then let's get to work. The machine moved to the pillar, its motions precise. Initiating recalibration, stand by. As the hum of the facility deepened, Finn and Lyra exchanged a glance. For the first time they were united, not by necessity, but by purpose. The balance would be restored, no matter the cost. The crystalline pillar at the centre of the sanctuary flared to life, its glow illuminating the chamber with an intense blue radiance. The hum that had permeated the air grew louder, vibrating through the walls and into the bones of everyone present. Finn shielded their eyes as streams of light arced from the pillar to the surrounding walls, forming an intricate lattice that pulsed in rhythm with the sanctuary's energy. The machine, standing motionless beside the pillar, spoke in its calm, resonant voice. Recalibration sequence initiated. External systems will destabilize. Restoration protocols are irreversible. Finn turned to Lyra, their voice rising over the hum. How long do we have before the city starts feeling the effects? Not long, Lyra replied, her eyes fixed on the pillar. We need to warn them. Warn them, the scarred scavenger leader, Bran, interjected. His voice was sharp with disbelief. You think they'll listen? The city doesn't care about anyone but themselves. Lyra's gaze snapped to Bran. If we don't warn them, they'll panic. Chaos will spread and more people will die. More people will die anyway, Bran shot back. At least this time, it won't be us. Finn stepped between them, their hands raised. This isn't the time for a debate. The machine's already started the process. We need to figure out how to handle the fallout before it's too late. Outside the sanctuary, the first signs of change were already visible. The toxic haze that had blanketed the wasteland was beginning to dissipate, revealing jagged cliffs and barren valleys that hadn't seen daylight in decades. The winds, once violent and erratic, had stilled to an eerie calm. But above the horizon, the floating city flickered. Its shimmering lights dimmed intermittently, and faint tremors rippled through its massive platforms. The energy that had sustained it for generations was being pulled away, redirected towards stabilizing the land below. Inside the sanctuary, Finn and Lyra worked frantically to decipher the pillar's interface, aided by the machine's cryptic instructions. Symbols and diagrams shifted across the glowing panels, their meanings just barely within Finn's grasp. This system is rewriting everything, Finn muttered, their fingers flying over the controls. It's not just restoring the environment, it's adapting it, making it livable again. That's the point, Lyra said, her voice clipped. But if we don't manage the transition, the city's collapse will take thousands with it. Bran watched from the edge of the chamber, his expression unreadable. You're still worried about the city after everything it's done? Let it fall. They deserve it. Finn shot him a glare. No one deserves to die like that, not even them. Bran said nothing, but the tension in his posture betrayed his inner conflict. The scavengers had spent their lives scraping by in the wasteland, victims of the city's greed. To see it fall was a vindication, but the cost of that fall was becoming harder to ignore. The hum of the sanctuary deepened, and the machine turned its glowing gaze toward the group. Recalibration at 50%, atmospheric conditions improving, urban systems at critical instability. Lyra straightened. her voice commanding. "We need to get a message to the city. They have to evacuate." "And go where?" Bran asked, his tone skeptical. "Out here? They wouldn't last a day. That's why we're doing this," Finn said. "The sanctuary isn't just about fixing the land. It's about creating a place where everyone can survive. Together." The room fell silent, the weight of Finn's words settling over the group. Even Lyra seemed momentarily taken aback, her gaze softening as she looked at Finn. "You really believe that?" Lyra said quietly. Finn nodded. "I have to." The next hours were a blur of frantic activity. Lyra used her comm to broadcast a warning to the city, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding above. Finn and the machine worked tirelessly to stabilize the recalibration process, ensuring that the sanctuary's energy redistribution didn't overwhelm the fragile systems. Above, the city began to falter. Entire platforms flickered and dimmed as power reserves drained away. But instead of collapse, something remarkable began to happen. The city's lower strata, long neglected and forgotten, began to descend. Massive support structures extended toward the ground, anchoring the city to the newly stabilizing land below. Finn watched the transformation from the edge of the canyon, their breath catching in their throat. "It's adapting," they said, their voice filled with awe. Lyra stood beside them, her expression unreadable. "It's not just the sanctuary, it's the people. They're finding a way to survive." Bran joined them, his arms crossed. "Surviving's one thing, thriving's another. We'll see if they can manage that." As the last phase of the recalibration completed, the sanctuary's glow began to dim, its energy fully integrated into the land. The wasteland, once a barren expanse, now showed the first signs of life. Green shoots breaking through the cracked soil, rivers carving paths through the valleys. Finn and Lyra stood at the edge of the sanctuary, watching the sun rise over a world transformed. The city was no longer a shimmering beacon in the sky, but a grounded part of the new ecosystem. Its people forced to confront the reality of the land they had once abandoned. "You think they'll make it?" Finn asked, their voice quiet. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Her gaze remained fixed on the horizon, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. "They'll have to, because now there's no turning back." Finn nodded, the weight of their journey finally lifting. The sanctuary had done its job, and now it was up to them to finish the rest. Thanks for listening. If the story stuck with you, come back next time for another journey.